third pillar is, of course, what ties it all together, and that's finance. Behind every policy and every partnership, it's financial leadership that turns vision into reality. And to guide us through that next conversation, it is my great honor to welcome our next moderator. Her name is Sara Eisen, anchor at CNBC, and she has an incredible distinguished panel of ministers for our board. We have His Excellency Ali Ahmed Al Kuwari, Minister of Finance for the State of Qatar. The Right Honorable Rachel Reeves, MP, Chancellor of the Exchequer, United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Welcome to the stage. And His Excellency Mehmet Şimşek, Minister of Finance and Treasury for the Republic of Turkey. Sara, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Everybody has to turn this way in their chairs. I'm Sara Eisen. I'm thrilled to be back here in Riyadh for FII and thrilled to be conducting what I think is one of the key conversations we're all having at the moment, which is this idea that globalization looks very different in 2025 than it did several years ago. And this balance that these policymakers before me have to do when it comes to sovereignty versus globalization, protecting your own citizens versus partnering with other countries. So I'm thrilled to have this conversation and kick it off, Chancellor, with you, because I am wondering how you are thinking about this balance right now and how different it looks today.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah, and it's great to be with you again. Look, for me and my government in the United Kingdom, our #1 priority is growing the economy. But we need to do that on a sort of a foundation of stability. And we do live in a more uncertain world. We can see that all around us, whichever newspapers and TV channels we watch. That uncertainty, whether it is higher tariffs, whether it is conflicts around the world. And that's why building relationships with our allies is more important than ever to build that security and resilience into the system. That's why in the United Kingdom we put real focus this last year on securing trade deals. The first trade deal to be signed with the United States, the comprehensive trade deal with India, rebuilding our relations with our nearest neighbours in the European Union. And just at the moment, and Your Excellency, we met this morning to talk about this, to negotiate a trade deal with the Gulf countries. And we're also working on a trade deal with Turkey, because we recognise that growth comes from being competitive, being challenged in markets by innovation, and trade is absolutely essential for that, as is investment. And Britain is very much open to investment, open for trade, open for talent, and open for business. And that's the message that I'm bringing with me to the FII this week.
Yeah, and I want to dive deeper in a minute into trade, into AI, areas that are ripe, I think, for collaboration and for opening, but also for protecting your own industry. But Your Excellency, I wanted to come to you on this. What areas do you protect and that do you focus internally, and which areas do you stress partnership and collaboration?
Thank you, Sarah. First of all, I'm so happy, so pleased to be again in the FII. It's a great conference, great attendance, great participation, and you know, I'm always happy to be in my brother city, Riyadh, and my brother country, Saudi Arabia. So, in terms of like, you know, I mean, now, I know there are so many challenges happening, you know, in the world in terms of like, you know, geopolitics and the tensions, and it's very difficult now to really, I know the globalization story have started many years ago. Now we're talking more like deglobalizations. But in my opinion, I think what Her Excellency, you know, Chancellor Reeves, you know, she mentioned, I agree with her 100%. You know, that really, you know, building direct partnership, you know, with the countries that you have, you know, important relationship is very important. And to give an example, I mean, UK, for example, is one of the big destinations of Qatar investment. We have more than 35 billion, you know, sterling pound, you know, investment in the UK, among, you know, other countries. But, you know, I mean, UK is a get, and we have signed an important investment in the sustainable, you know, technologies, also 1 billion pound, you know, last year during His Highness visit to the UK. So this building direct partnership is really one of the solutions. But in the same time, I think it's extremely important we strengthen the multilateral organizations. I think what happened, we have worked so hard in the many years ago, to build a rules-based system for engagement. And I think we need to come back and rebuild and strengthen the multilateral organizations. And for the multilateral organizations, they need to be more focused and also sticking to their core business. So I think very important that we go back. In terms of protectionism, Qatar is open. We are open for business, we are open for FDI, and we have developed a world-class World Cup 2022, which gave us a huge momentum in terms of building the infrastructure and the brand of Qatar. Now we look forward to leverage on that and to continue our diversification journey. Qatar is one of the largest LNG producers in the world. However, our focus will continue also to be in the non-hydrocarbon sector. And to say that, the first 6 months, most of our growth, 5% of the growth came from the non-hydrocarbon GDP. So we continue to push, and in terms of business, I think we are very open. We don't want to, talk about protectionism. I think we need to work together with the whole world, and it has to be a win-win situation. This is what we believe, and we push very hard in terms of building partnership, FTAs, and also direct relationship, even CBAs, economic cooperations, or TBAs, like the one we have with Turkey in place today. So it's very important that we build this relationship, but at the same time, I think we should not ignore the rules-based system and the multilateral organizations. I think it's very important to strengthen them again. And
like IMF, World Bank?
IMF, WTO, WHO, all these organizations are very important because they set the rules of engagement for, relationship among the countries. And, I think the world has done extremely well with the globalization story. And I think we need really to reestablish that. I think doing it on your own is going to be very difficult.
Interesting. Should we go back to globalization? Your Excellency, how does Turkey approach this?
Well, I do agree with fellow panelists. Globalization has been a strong engine of global growth. We all know that 1 billion people were lifted out of poverty since 1990s, where global trade volume has gone up by almost 6-fold. So as Chancellor highlighted, we remain open. We continue to invest in regional and global integration because we do see benefits there. However, having said that, we are also looking at strengthening certain areas where de-risking is required, such as energy, supply security. In the future, I think with COVID-19, health and biotechnology areas. AI, while we remain open to collaboration, trying to lure hyperscalers, supported by AI, at the same time, data privacy, cybersecurity, these are critical national issues where you have to invest in competence. So really, while broadly speaking, we do see benefits, we have to address dislocations. That's where the social and political backlash come in, in terms of globalization. I think ministers of finance can do a lot. There are parts of, country or sectors where significant dislocations happens.
Sure.
If we can address them, maybe the backlash, domestic, political and social backlash against globalization would go down. So really, we're now at a phase of de-risking rather than completely deglobalizing.
Chancellor, I'm so glad that the political backlash was mentioned because you're all talking about being open and the benefits of globalization, but wasn't Brexit sort of a rejection of that?
I think Brexit was a rejection of open borders. But if you look at the UK today, when we did that deal back in May with the European Union to take down some of those barriers and indeed to introduce an ambitious youth mobility scheme, there was public support for that. And actually, the sort of worry perhaps that we had as a government that reopening that can of worms of our relationship with the European Union might be quite dangerous, actually the response has been very good. For businesses, especially small businesses who face increasing red tape since we left the European Union, for workers who are now locked out of the jobs market in Europe, there are obviously huge benefits from rebuilding some of those relations. But also inflation is too high in countries around the world, including in the UK. And one of the reasons for that is that there's too much cost associated with trade with our nearest neighbours and trading partners. But I very much agree with my friends about recognising that in the insecure world we're in today, building up our domestic capabilities, but also diversifying our supply chains is really important. We saw during COVID and after Russia's invasion of Ukraine that the prices went up because supply chains were disrupted. In the UK, we want to be more self-sufficient in energy, which is why we're investing so significantly in that. It's why, like other countries around the world, we're investing in data centers and technology and AI, so we are less reliant on others. But this is not about building walls, because there are many countries where we share values, where it is mutually beneficial to take down those barriers to trade, and that's what we're trying to pursue, with really positive impacts for jobs and growth in Britain. And in the end, all of the challenges that we've spoken about whilst we've been here, all of the panels today, and the point that you were just making, Minister, about public consent for policies. Well, public consent is a lot higher when people see their living standards improve. And to do that, you've got to grow the economy, which means boosting productivity. And so investing in infrastructure, investing in technology, both at the business level and at the state level, is absolutely crucial if we're going to have growth that actually delivers for people in all of our jurisdictions, because all of us depend, whatever type of political system you live in, that the people benefit from growth and can see the impact of it, both on themselves and on the services and the state of the public realm.
Your Excellency, I'm curious about your feelings on tariffs, whether they, and how they feed into this conversation, because I'm struck in the US talking to small and large businesses that I thought would hate the tariffs because it increases their costs. But what I increasingly am hearing is, I'm glad someone's standing up for American business, and so I'm willing to pay it. And there is that idea that it takes care of your domestic industry when you put on tariffs. How do you approach that?
Well, tariffs are one form of protectionism. And we know that in the long run, it doesn't serve humanity. But I can understand, the sentiment in the United States, or broadly speaking, in developed world. If you look at the last, again, 30, 40 years, with the emergence of China and other large emerging markets, I think a quarter of manufacturing jobs were lost in the West, speaking broad West here, in industrialized West. So a quarter of industrial jobs gone. Wage gap grew. I mean, wages in the United States in real terms have been almost stagnant. So I'm not trying to comment. So I can understand the backlash or the assessment of that sort that you've highlighted. But the reality is, again, those are the exact dislocations that could be addressed otherwise, which hasn't. And that created the type of social and political understanding and the backlash that led to emergence of the current situation. But we all know that if the engine of global growth, which has been trade, if it sputters, I think global growth may not be able to stay at about 3%, which is barely enough to increase per capita GDP globally.
So trade is necessary for that, I guess. Your Excellency, when it comes to AI and technology, how do you make sure that you have an advantage, but also have important partnerships as I mean, it's almost impossible to compete now with what the US and what China are doing when it comes to investment and infrastructure.
AI is part of the strategies we are doing in terms of our diversification plan. And I think when it comes to AI, you have to invest in the downstream part of the AI. I mean, yes, data centers. Everybody talks about data centers because we have ample energy in this part of the world, and everybody would like to invest in data centers. Yes, data centers make sense, but we don't get into the bottom of AI through the data centers. So the downstream side, and basically where we have national champions, like in Qatar, we can talk in the energy side and the LNG, for example, we have the advantage of the data and the innovations, in that field. Aviation, with the super airlines, in the Gulf here, Qatar Airways, Emirates, and so we can really benefit from that. So the only thing we have to invest on is the human capital and the copyright and the innovation side. So we need really, to work very hard, and of course we have to work with the partners, for this one. Speaking of, in terms of the disruption happened to the international trade. I think what happened, we had a very good system working together in terms of somebody's focusing in the innovation and the human capital, and the mass production is happening somewhere else. I think this has got disrupted, and I think it's very important to restore that. I think where we can really make a difference is really in the investment on the innovation part, and this is where we can make the difference. And yes, protectionism, you can be protected, but you can't be protectionist forever, because at the end of the day, technologies get to be known and they get to be copied. We have seen this in the past. So it's very important, really, to build on the business itself, in the sense of the reproduction itself. So, and this is what we are doing. Qatar is really AI at the heart of our investment. Is a very important tool for innovation. And in terms of already we have the infrastructure, we have the telecom infrastructure, we have the energy, we can really make a huge difference in the AI. And already we have started partnership with the big companies, in the US, really where we can make a difference in that field.
You announced a significant investment in the United States a few months ago when President Trump came to the region. How much of that is going to go toward AI?
A big part of it. I think Qatar Investment Authority, they promised, $500 billion over the 10 years in terms of investment. I would say most of that will go, most of it is going to be in the technology and the AI, because we see the growth in this field. This is where the growth, and it's going to be rewarding. It's a purely in a commercial basis, and we see, now the huge growth we see in the U.S. economy is really coming from technology and AI. And we believe this is going to be the situation moving forward. So we believe this is one area we're going to really focus on.
How much time do you spend, Chancellor, on trying to attract investment and talent to Britain when it comes to AI? And what are your meetings like with the big tech companies in the U.S.?
Well, we were really pleased when we had the US state visit to the UK a few weeks ago to be able to announce 150 billion pounds worth of investment into the UK, and that was primarily in AI and tech from Microsoft, Google, Nvidia, and others. Obviously, it's a real strength of the UK. We have deep minds in the UK. I've got a delegation of business leaders with me this week, including spin-outs from Oxford and Cambridge universities. We're developing that corridor between those two universities to create a sort of, greater links and greater opportunities to expand those cities and their research capabilities and the businesses that come out of them. So we see AI in itself as a real positive growth engine for the UK, but also AI now underpins everything else we do. So if it's life sciences, that is underpinned increasingly by AI. Take financial services, or fintech is the big growth area there, and in the UK we're blessed to have businesses like Revolut that are growing at pace, not just in the UK now, but but globally too. So AI underpins everything that we do. And we're also bringing AI and technology much more into running government services. We're increasingly putting things into a government wallet, a sort of a digital wallet where you can access information, starting with a driver's license and a veteran's card. So using technology and AI as well to improve productivity in government as well. And I sort of think that for many businesses, obviously the home market's always going to be incredibly important, but then you want a secondary market as well. And how the UK is positioning itself is the natural second home for businesses and sovereign wealth funds from around the world, because we've got some of the best universities in the world, some of the best startup and scale-up businesses. We've got deep and vibrant and liquid capital markets, and also those trade deals with countries around the world means that you can establish yourselves in the UK and then export with better terms of trade to pretty much anywhere else in the world. And so that's how we're positioning ourselves as a country. Let me just finally address the issue that you mentioned, Sarah, of talent, because a bit like what we've discussed around tariffs and those sort of barriers to trade, other countries are also a little bit more cautious around talent and migration. Now, in the UK, we need to do more to stop illegal migration, but we're very much open to the top talent from around the world. And just recently, we've doubled the number of visas for all of our global talent visas. So that's for high net worth individuals, graduates from the best universities around the world, and also for researchers, particularly in some of those growth sectors like AI and life sciences to our universities. And with no doubt we're going to fill those places on those visa schemes, but it's just another example about how in the world we're in, we want to be a country that is open to talent and trade and business.
Do you have to convince them that you're not going to over-regulate? I mean, when I think sometimes of the UK and Europe, the fear is that. Too much regulation.
On the contrary, by the end of next month, we will have passed the biggest piece of legislation I expect of this whole parliamentary term on planning and infrastructure. And that is all about ripping up unnecessary planning and regulatory rules to make it easier to build data centres, train lines, nuclear power stations, offshore wind projects, the cables to get the energy to homes and to businesses. Our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has also made a commitment to reduce the burden of regulation on businesses by 25% during the course of this Parliament. We've already started that in financial services by taking out regulators. We've changed the leadership team at the Competition and Markets Authority to make it more pro-business. And so, you know, we're differentiating ourselves as well within Europe as being a country that is ripping up the planning rules, tearing up unnecessary regulation to ensure that you can actually get things done in Britain. And that's increasingly the case. And I think investors, whether that's sovereign wealth funds, private equity, venture businesses, can see that this government is moving forward at pace with measures to grow the economy.
Good. Music to people's ears, I'm sure. Here, Your Excellency, how do you prioritize AI in a national strategy? And how do you, maybe if you could just work it in to figure out who your friends are when it comes to partnering with countries like China or like US on AI?
On AI, we are closely integrated with Western ecosystem, even though there are some components from other countries. I think the way we see AI and the whole digital transformation, this is one area where you have to be open, but at the same time, to some degree, sovereign, you know, it's one of those nodes that you invest. That's why we are trying to build our own Starlink, you know, low orbit satellites to provide internet. We're investing very heavily in fiber infrastructure. 5G plus is well underway. We are investing in nuclear power plants to provide the base load for AI. So we're doing everything. In terms of human capital, we feel that we're blessed. Every year we get about 940,000 university graduates, and increasingly more in these areas. So human capital-wise, we're in good shape. Infrastructure, we're developing. And regulations, we did not join the European bandwagon in terms of Digital Market Act. So we've avoided that. And I think we want to look what's working before we move. So yes, we are investing heavily. It's one of those niche that could provide huge, immense boost to productivity. So we're quite optimistic. But again, we're trying to lure some international hyperscaler, investments. Having said that, some of our regulations, such as trusted cloud, keeping data, while cross-border data is allowed, but storing data locally, they're telling us that that's getting in the way.
So it's, I mean, we're out of time, but it sounds like the three of you are all in the middle of negotiating deal, like some sort of trade deals with each other.
Yes.
Are we going to, was this helpful?
Qatar,
are we going to get this done?
Qatar, Turkey already
Yes,
done.
we are going to get that done, aren't we?
Qatar, GCC, UK, almost done, I should
Yes.
say.
Okay.
With UK, we're almost done. With European Union, we're trying to upgrade the customs unions that we have to expand it into public procurement, services, and agriculture. But I think we're more optimistic that our deal with UK will be concluded soon. EU is more complicated, typically.
It would have been cool if you announced it on stage, but that was close. Thank you all very much for joining the conversation, and thank you for being here. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Sara Eisen. Sara, we almost closed the deal on stage. That was a good effort. I want to thank also His Excellency, the Minister of Turkey, for talking about AI, how they're investing heavily, and how also Rachel mentioned that they are getting rid of unnecessary bureaucracy that might impede progress. I want everybody now to swivel your seats to the middle of the room. That's where we're going to have the next Board of Changemakers on Finance. But before that starts, I have a poll for all of you. We have talked about whether a recession is possible, yes or no, and now we want to hear from you. So if you can scan the QR codes on the screen with your cell phones, we would love to get your input on whether a global economic recession is likely in the next year, yes or no. We have people that have started to vote right here. Thank you so much, sir, because we're going to announce those results during the next panel. So make sure to take out your phones and vote. And now, before our next board, let's please watch this video, everybody.
A great unraveling is underway. Tariffs and trade barriers are rising. These fractures are